We're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Game Audio Hour number 43, right? Wasn't it 42 last week?
I think it's 43. Yeah, that sounds about right.
43. So a few more, and then we've got a year under our belt. That's pretty awesome. But anyway, it's our weekly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to the latest techniques, project experiences, to audio secrets. Here's where you find in-depth coverage and opinions related to game audio. And hey, Alex, are you Red Eye?
I'm Red Eye like a Jedi. No, no, no. Don't laugh. So stupid. Yes, I'm ready. It's not that
Alex,
funny.
Alex said that in the green room, and I couldn't stop laughing, so I had to set him up. A home
I'm,
run?
I'm
Red Eye
well.
like a Jedi. Speaking of Red Eye like a Jedi, you've seen the new trailer, have you, for the new Star
Yeah, I
Wars?
haven't. I think there's a lot of humor going around the internet about and a lot of parodies and a lot of people bagging it. And I mean, come on, guys, this is Star Wars. I mean, you know that you'll see it. The critics will see it, and they'll probably hate it. you
Mm-hmm.
know, but give them like sort of 5 years, and then they'll look back and say, yeah, that was cool. That was really, you remember that preview? Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We have such a short memory as like consumers of media, don't we?
Right.
Harsh opinions right at the beginning, and then we forget.
I think. Wow, looks like is everybody okay out there? Looks like everybody just dropped off the chat room, and now everybody's back again.
It was your
Something
joke.
happened? That was my joke.
Yeah, it was terrible. Red Eye like a Jedi.
Yeah.
We're lucky
Well,
anybody's left in the room.
it's like there's a mass exodus in my sense of humor.
Don't you like how I set you up to do it, and then I blame you for doing it? That's very kind of
Yeah,
me. Yeah.
that's very kind. Um, Unfortunately, today there's only the two of us. However, we're hoping to be joined in about 10
Seven.
minutes
Yeah.
by the astounding Matt Piersall.
Woohoo!
Is everybody seeing this okay? Everybody's
Yeah, we should take a moment just to make sure everything's fine. Matt M says, we're back! The
okay,
sound is
and
amazing.
I think Chase is not talking about us. I think he's talking about Star Wars.
Well, he's got to be talking about us. I took down my microphone, speaking of which, so I've, like, the last 10 episodes, I've just been using the camera mic.
We haven't noticed. Haven't really noticed any difference.
Oh, well, that says quite a lot about the camera mic and quite a little about the expensive mic setup I was using.
So I guess, the Logitech is going to be soon taking over Telefunken in the studios around the world.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was going through, a mic pre, a DBX compressor into a nice condenser mic, and you're telling me that it sounds just like a webcam mic. Oh,
So it looks like everybody's okay in the chat room. Yeah. So everybody's good. So Star Wars, yes.
Star
There's
Wars.
a lot of mirth going on around the hilt on the lightsaber.
Yeah,
It
I
comes
thought
out
that
and the
was
hilt comes out.
awesome.
And people arguing that if you actually tried to fence or swashbuckle with this kind of thing, you'd probably cut your wrist off.
Yeah.
Come on, I mean, just give it a break. I mean, it's Star Wars, you got to enjoy it eventually.
There were 1,000 reasons to already die from a lightsaber, and that's the one that puts the nail in the coffin. That's the one you can't disbelieve is the hilt, Not the
That's
fact
right.
that it's a sword made of light that just pops out.
And cuts through absolutely everything. Well, what would happen if you forgot to turn it off before you put it back on your belt? I mean, your leg would be gone.
Exactly. Somebody bumps into you and when you're shopping one day and it goes straight down and puts a hole through your foot.
Yeah.
These are all plausible things that count. How would a lightsaber that accidentally got jangled open and cut a hole through your foot sound like?
Let's ask Ben Burt.
Let's go. Yow! That's about it, right? Oh, we've got because you got to have that sound when it goes through the foot.
So he actually, Ben Burt, I believe those sounds he actually made via. Yeah, your humor is so bad. I'm just going to move right along.
You just moved on.
He actually made the sounds via plucking cables on power lines, wasn't it? Like the cables that support.
I think it's the link. Oh,
That's like that's the those are great legends now in the sound design and audio community, aren't they?
Sounds like we had a little mess up with the audio. So if I cut you off or whatever, you were just saying that he been cables that hold up power towers, right? To get the
Sorry. Yeah, I think the sounds of lightsabers hitting. No, the sounds of lightsabers. I think he actually did with some kind of electronic. I think like a pole with a very low current running through it that he would hit on things. But I think the actual sound of the lightsaber coming out. No, I can't remember, but something along the line there was like these huge strong cables that hold up power lines. The poles for the power lines. I think he used something like that for the lightsaber sound effects. So that is sound design, late 70s style.
I wish we could still do stuff like that. It's almost too bad that we have such huge libraries now because we lean on them. Again,
Right.
What's the saying? I can't think of it. Something lack of having something is the mother of invention. I can't think of the saying right now, but that would be a position that we need to be in, and we've preached that too many times in the past. That limit yourself so that you can be more creative. We have too many options.
Right.
Speaking of too many options, I wanted to
So what are we
talk
talking? What are we
about.
talking about today, Kyle?
Let's talk about Black Friday sales. Too many options.
Right.
I will start by explaining why I call it too many options, because I have traditionally never owned Waves anything. It's too expensive. I don't like having software. I like hardware. I'm an old grump. You know, it's difficult for me to pay $3,000 for a piece of software that I don't have my hands on.
Hmm.
And Waves gets up there. Gold is traditionally $800, but they did a sale for $199 for gold. So I thought, well, that's a deal. You get like 20 to 30 plugins for $200. That's a good deal. And so I
Yeah.
jumped on that one. But now I have like 800 compressors, 4,000 EQs, And I shouldn't be complaining, and I'm not really. I don't mean that in a bad way. Having that many, though, I don't know the difference on how each one sounds. So I was thinking about taking just like a little strip of audio, one for
Hmm.
guitar, a little like stereo of some drums playing, a little stereo of a vocalist, a mono of a bassist, and individually load all the different, compressors. Like
Hmm.
Waves gives me some compressor. Put that compressor on each one of those tracks and play them one at a time, messing with the compressor. Then switch to another competing compressor that they have in the same package. And my God, I was thinking, I really want to do that so I can learn exactly what each one of these sounds like, but I don't
Hmm.
have the time to do that. So that sent me out to the interwebs looking for some people who are already using Waves Gold and already using Ableton and have perhaps made a rack of their favorite like mastering or mixing devices from Waves, and that was very difficult to find.
Right.
So it all started with a Black Friday sale, led to me trying to find devices that people have already done this experimentation and have already lined up their favorite devices, and I could just go to those suggestions.
Hmm.
Um, would you go crazy on for Black
Yeah.
Friday?
Actually,
Where has that led
just
you?
just while we're on the topic of Waves, Waves is a very interesting company. Matt Miller in the chat room is saying that Waves is extortion, because it's the thing about Waves that is a little bit of mysterious is their pricing policy really is rather, I don't know,
Steep.
they're so expensive to buy, except when they're on sale, when they come down to the kind of price bracket that you would probably expect for what the product is. So you get the feeling that the whole
Yeah.
marketing plan seems to revolve around, maybe there's a coincidental chance that a new customer or a very, very rich customer doesn't realize that we actually drop our prices fairly regularly to sort of more approachable, reasonable price brackets, and maybe we'll just get lucky with somebody dropping that much money for something which actually, when you factor in the development costs and all of those costs, is maybe worth a fair bit less, hence
Yeah.
the sale prices. It's sort of, I don't know, when you see that, you sort of think, yeah, you've got like $900 plugin drop down to $69. I mean, what actually is the value of that plugin then? You know, and therefore you sort of get the feeling that, gee, you kind of feel sorry for people who don't know about the sales or just think, oh well, Tony Maserati and Sheps and Dave Pensado and all those guys use Waves, so I guess it must be good, so I'll just grab it even though it costs like $900.
I think studios do that. I think I feel the same way about Pro Tools. It's just too expensive a DAW to mess with, and quite frankly, there's no argument that they have fallen behind all of the other DAWs for features. Yet they
I
still remain
wonder,
extremely expensive.
do you ever have the opportunity to interact with people in the LA music production scene? Because I'd be really interested to know why it is that you look at the top build mixers and top build mastering, maybe not mastering engineers, but the top build mixing guys, especially in the west coast of the States. I don't know if all these ones are in the west coast, but yeah, like I said, like Sheps and Lord Alge and Pensado and all these guys, they're all using Pro Tools and they're all using Waves. It's sort of, I don't really understand why it is that Waves has got such a strong presence that seems to be unshakable, that regardless of the fact that now there are so many really excellent plugins out there for so much cheaper, of comparable or better quality than Waves, and yet the top guys are still going on about the wonders and the fantastic tone of their Renaissance compressor, or Waves L2 or whatever, when there's so many other options that are cheaper. I'd really like to know why it is that Waves has got this monopoly.
Yeah, well, I have an opinion. More about Pro Tools than Waves. Pro Tools, see, when I studied in college and I studied engineering, we were just talking about that in the green room for the last half of my college education. When I'll make it a short story. Alesis had just come out with this brand new thing called an ADAT, and it wasn't even in the market yet. And they selected a few colleges where they would come by and teach you this new way. And where I went to school, they brightly, I suppose, because I wasn't there for the decision, obviously, but I think somebody behind the scenes said, we should, get this in. This is what the future is going to look like for recording audio, and it looks realistic. And so we ended up getting Alesis to come in and teach us some stuff. And it was just prior to me graduating. So here's my whole life with my hands on boards and all this stuff. And then these blackface ADATs show up. And they actually ended up giving us, all the people in the class, one blackface ADAT, and I still have it. And certainly that was the dawn of digital recording. And so Pro Tools existed already, on computers for people to try to do stuff. And I think they also said, the wave of the future is going to be recording to your hard drive. We need to be the first people into studios with this. And I think it was the 1-2 punch of these huge recording studios seeing this digital option now for media. I remember famously Joe Jackson put out a record where he did everything digital, and it was this as was Howard. Aliens Ate My Buick was the name of the album, and I can't think of the guy now. Thomas Dolby put out this complete, one of the first all-digital CDs. Everything was recorded digitally, and it did sound pretty amazing, and it got a lot of coverage. And so studios, I think, were in their old analog way saying, we don't want to change our ways, but business people that owns those studios said, well, if we're going to keep getting clients in, and digital's the wave of the future, and these CDs and these digitally recorded products are really becoming very popular, we need to embrace it rather than rebel against it. So I think you've got the engineers who don't want to do it, and you've got the owners who say, we're absolutely going to do it to maintain our livelihood. And Pro Tools just walked in at that time and said, hey, here's a way that we can get, and they advertised themselves and went to all these recording studios and schlocked their wares. And I think that the studios jumped on it. Cubase wasn't doing it, not that I know of. So I think that the studios jumped on the Pro Tools train. But then what happened is it's expensive, and it's like a virus. It's in there, and you can't really clear it out of studios. Studios where I end up working, they all have Pro Tools setups. They all have a closet full of all this rack full of Digitech or Digidesign gear, and it would cost them so much money in losses because of how much it costs to buy to replace it with something that's better. And you could, for the longest time, the Pro Tools hardware would not work with any other DAW. And that only happened within the last, year and a half, maybe 2 years. So now you've got these engineers who are against using any kind of digital. I absolutely know those people exist, because the good thing about being engineers is if you get good, you keep a long career. And so I can talk to guys who have been doing this way before digital, and they wanted to stay the analog way, but now they've been forced over the couple of decades, 3 or 4 decades, to, how long's it been, 2 or 3 decades, to now accept this digital recording via Pro Tools, because that's what the studio purchased. And so they don't really want to learn a new DAW. The hardware would be a massive loss if the studio tried to change it. And Pro Tools smartly didn't give studios an opportunity to use any DAW they wanted with their hardware. I think that combination just kind of stuck Pro Tools in studios, and therefore they've never left.
It sort of mirrors a little bit how Microsoft, in the early 90s, really dominated, how they were able to dominate the sort of low budget PC market as well. That's really interesting, isn't it? So, yeah. Anyway, to go back to your question, you asked what I checked out for the Black Friday. So actually, I did check out a few DAWs. I thought I would give Bitwig a try. If you're not aware that actually Bitwig is on sale from now until I think the start of January. Bitwig is I think it's $295.
Is it?
Yeah.
Look at it.
So I'll talk about that in a moment. The other one I tried out was Ableton Live, of course. Of the new generation, DAWs out there, Ableton is certainly at the cutting edge, if not the cutting edge, of the new generation. New generation meaning not Cubase or Logic or Pro Tools or DP or Sonar or a Cakewalk or any of these old industry elder statesmen.
Who is in the new industry? Who would you say are the new style DAWs? Ableton, Bitwig, who else?
Yeah, Ableton and Bitwig. As people who watch know, I'm an avid. My main DAW is Renoise, but I don't know that I would class Renoise in there simply because it's a very specialist tool, and it's not. It can do everything, but it's sort of not. And it's not trying to be for everybody. It's not trying to be the one solution that everybody can just slide into easily. Otherwise, it certainly wouldn't look the way that it does. So I don't know. It pains me to say this, but I probably might not class Renoise in there. I might put Renoise on the fringe as a sort of a specialist tool, along with a few others. But I guess FL Studio, Reason, I would probably put Reason together with Renoise on the side as like a specialist tool. Although I do know one or two game audio guys here in Japan who actually do all of their work in Reason, which is interesting. So like Renoise as well, you can do it, and I do it. Certainly, I would put Reaper in there as one of the sort of new generation, in together with Live and Bitwig.
I was curious because isn't Reaper just basically? I've never used it.
Oh, really? Reaper is very Reaper, unlike Live and Bitwig. Reaper doesn't try to approach the scene with any unusual workflows. Reaper is, I guess. Reaper's main selling point, of course, is the fact that it's so configurable. It's kind of like what Linux is to operating systems. If you're willing to put in the time to really learn it and to really customize it to what you need, it's incredibly reliable, incredibly stable, fast, and very, the updates are very frequent. It's very, very stable, as I said. Timing is good, rendering quality is fantastic. It's got everything you need. However, it's not so much a sort of a, double click, start playing. Here you go. You've just created your song. You do need to invest a little bit of time into setting it up, so that it's comfortable for you to use. Yeah. Anyway, so coming back to Bitwig, so it's very interesting. I tried. I'd known that Bitwig was created by a bunch of guys who used to work for Ableton.
Yep.
Together with Klaus something or other, the guy from Vemba Audio who made a classic VST called Surge.
Oh, okay.
And Bitwig is very, very smartly designed. You can tell that it definitely comes from that Live heritage because it's sort of the main paradigm of how it's put together. It mirrors Live in that you've got a clip view or an arranged view, and you can you can move between them the same way that you can in live. However, the design of the interface is really clever. There's a lot of very clever little things in there that you just sort of, you stroke your chin and say, oh, that's a good idea. That's very logical. Mm-hmm. And speaking of good ideas and very logical, we have right here with
Matt's popping in.
He's got an icon there that looks just like the Ableton logo, so we're about to get some endorsements.
It's like Ableton and the Rolling Stones.
Here he is.
What's up, Matt?
Here's Trouble.
Hey guys, how are you?
How are you?
Super.
You're in the kitchen.
Actually, my place is just tiny. I'm in my kitchen office.
I see.
Like I'm a minimalist when it comes to living. I live in basically like 600 square feet.
Nice.
You might enjoy Japan, Matt. I think you're in the wrong country.
I know, maybe, probably. As long as I like it, like the important things for me is that I can walk to go get coffee, drink, food, those kinds of things. That's more important than anything else to me. So.
I agree. It's within walking distance. It doesn't have to be big.
Exactly.
That panel behind me actually folds down into a double bed. That's
absolutely on my level, bro.
Oh, that's not fair. Anyway, so we were talking about Bitwig and Ableton, and also I just want to mention though that because we're so ahead of the times and awesome, if you go back to one of the earliest episodes of Game Audio Hour, we had a big discussion of Bitwig.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I tried it, and oddly, I didn't feel. Well, it was early. It was a beta, so that's not fair that I would judge. But I was surprised at how I wanted to do Ableton things with it, and when my hand would go there, that wasn't what Bitwig was doing with it.
All right.
So even though it looked like Ableton and a cooler color scheme, if you ask me, and that makes a difference to me. I got to kind of be in the mood. I got to turn on lights and colors have to be. But it wasn't intuitive, and I felt that it was actually ironic that it wasn't intuitive, that it was so much like Ableton, but yet not enough like Ableton, that an Ableton user like me, who would just naturally go to this position to do something, it wasn't there, or it didn't work that way. And I thought, oh, man, that's too bad.
It's been created by ex-Ableton people?
It is, yeah, but it's got some differences.
That's interesting, actually, because I've never used Live before. And so approaching Bitwig for me was completely new, and I found it very, the whole implementation of their clip system and the way that the clips interact with the arrange view and all of that. I actually found Bitwig more intuitive than Live. I was trying to figure out why is it when I press here, but then I go back to the arrange view, I'm not seeing anything, but then if I put something in the arrange view and I come back here and that's stopped, and what's going on?
That makes sense, actually, because, Ableton being the first of this style of work has made some mistakes, and they certainly have some stuff that drives me crazy, because I almost never work in the cellular view, and yet if I do some kind of weird flippy or changey, the little MIDI guide pops up at the top of my Ableton, and I'll find out that now suddenly none of my automation's working, and I have to click on that to make it go away so my automations will come back, and I have no idea why it even did it in the first place. So there's definitely some weird Ableton moments that maybe Bitwig has fixed.
If you're
Go ahead, please. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. If you're not using the clip view, isn't the clip view the main feature of Live? I mean, what benefits does Live give you as just a linear DAW if you're not using that clip view?
For me?
Robot Alex. Sorry.
Did you catch that? No? Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, because your line just completely went robotic. It was weird.
Oh, it's Godzilla. This is Japan. We get that every now and then. My question was that if you're not making use of the clip view in Live, which arguably is the main selling point of Ableton Live, and you're just using the arrange view, what benefits does Live's arrange view give you over any other DAW's standard traditional arrange view?
Ooh, Matt, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So I think what I get out of the clip view is just a very clear picture of the overall track. But you could say that of any DAW. I wouldn't say you get much out of, sorry, not the clip view, but the arrange view. I wouldn't say you get much out of the arrange view other than you can take a specific region and modify that region without affecting the other regions, and I really like that. And that's mainly good for music, but it also can be very good for sound design too. Yeah, I mean, I'm very comfortable with it. The only problem that I have with it is that when you go back to clip view, I kind of wish that if you looped a region, I don't know how heavy you guys are into Ableton, but I wish when you looped a region, it would select those clips from that region. Instead, it just kind of says we're doing whatever now. So I wish there was a little bit tighter, more of a tighter marriage between the clip and arrange view.
Yeah, that's kind of the impression that I got. So part of these Black Friday deals, you may have seen that Ableton Live actually is still on sale until January. So I tried out, I downloaded the demo and gave it a shot. Yeah, it's really difficult for me because I'm used to working with trackers, and so it's really hard to get your brain around that sort of linear style of music production somehow. Sorry, not linear, the clip style. And
right.
You know, and I kind of felt, well, if I'm not making 100% use of this clip style, then what is the point of Live? I mean, why not just use Reaper or Logic or any of the other options for?
Like I'm going to answer that by saying that what I like about Live and the clip view is that the clip view I look at. So in Pro Tools, for example, depending on what you're doing, like for me, I do a lot of sound design with it. So when I sound design with Live, I create a lot of variations in the clip view, and the clip view becomes this sort of like place where I store all of my creations. And then and if I'm doing something like more intense, I'll take it to the arrange view. But if you look at the clip view as a place to keep all of these concepts and test them out and try them, then that's the way to use it. It's the clip view for me is about making one track. Like if we're talking music, it's one track with 20 different beats on it that you might only use 2 of them, but it's nice to have them so you can easily audition the various versions that you've had. Like if you're doing sound effects, what I like about the clip view is that you can do these crazy processes, and you've got all these clips that are. It's basically like a really good hierarchy to me. I have my creation tracks, and then I have my bounce tracks, and I have this whole system that's color coded and everything, so I know this is source, meaning that this is pulled either from a library or recorded or created with a synthesizer. And then this is the affected source, or what I'm going to use in the actual composition or sound effect. So when I have a lot of those, I pull those into the drum rack. For me, for doing sound effects, I pull them into the drum rack, and I've just got this thing where I can constantly try stuff. Whereas in Pro Tools or Reaper or anything that's a linear-based composition tool or sound design tool, I always keep my design creations just kind of wherever on the timeline, and so it's hard to actually find a place to design. And
I see.
Completely, it makes that whole concept unnecessary, because basically, to make your creation, I just solo out the drum rack and then I'm there, or I re-enable the arrange view, and then what my arrangement is. But I very rarely use the arrange view, other than if I'm doing music, or maybe sometimes if I'm doing a complicated sound design piece to picture.
Interesting, yeah. The one thing that I thought Bitwig did that Live doesn't do, which I thought was really nice, actually Reaper does this too, is the ability to show multiple MIDI clip content in the one view.
That's
because Reaper does that as well, and when you work with tracker stuff like I do, you're used to seeing your entire piece of music in one eye shot. So if you have a drum's going like this, and you want to do counterpoint with your bass line, or if you have this harmony here and this arpeggio or whatever, and you want to counterpoint the harmony over here in a different part, you don't need to be double-clicking on clips and opening them and closing them, because you can see everything that's happening in the song at any moment on one long line. And so the ability to see it, you just get used to, you program in your drums, and your drums are still there, and now you can look at it and listen to it and think, okay, well, maybe I might drop some bass notes in here in between there, and that will emphasize on this note together, and that will be on the offbeat there, and everything. This counterpoint is really, really easy. And the in Bitwig, that's very easy too. You just select 2 of their clips, and then you get like a sort of a layers panel, just like in Photoshop, and you can just make sure that you're only editing this channel, but you can keep the other channel ghosted in the background. And Reaper can do that too, but it was a sort of a shame that Live can't do that. Maybe they might add that kind of functionality in the future.
Yeah, Live, actually, that's the one issue that I have, is that viewing the content, because it's in that bottom window, can be a bit difficult sometimes. I think it's almost like too focused.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that I feel like sometimes that window is weird to me. Although, like, for what they originally created Live for, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's precisely the point. It's important to remember exactly that Live is called Live for a reason.
Yeah. When Live came out, I actually used version 1 of Live. I guess it was in maybe 2000 or 2001, whenever they came out. And I had been using it for a while, and one of my friends worked at Guitar Center at the time. And he said, yeah, we've been using Live for like a year. And he's like, Live has only been out for 2 months in the US. So we were using a cracked version of the first English version really early on.
Wow.
And when it originally came out, there was no MIDI, there was only live effects. It was basically like, create your loops wherever you create them, pull them together, and then perform them. That's it.
Kind of like Tractor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but with like a lot tighter timing.
Right.
Actually, I used to because I DJ as well. I'm kind of in love with Tractor right now because I feel like it's a really good program for. I think Tractor in some ways is more freeform than Live is as a DJ tool. Live is great though for like. I have everything. It's relatively close to the BPM because the warping can be weird in Live, and it's gotten a lot better. But Live is great for I want to like jam with a bunch of friends, record a lot of tiny small parts, and then arrange that into something cool. Like that's what it was created for.
Yeah, actually, this Black Friday sale, Tractor was on sale as well. So
Yes.
I just thought, I have no opportunity to and I doubt I ever will have an opportunity to play Live anywhere, but I thought I'd just sort of try Live and try Tractor. Tractor's it certainly makes you think, doesn't it? Like it's think as in a grander sense about what's happening in the world of music production and music arrangement now. That
Right.
Is it a good thing that DJs no longer the skill of beat matching is no longer ultimately necessary as it used to be?
Please talk about this. It's something that I have been thinking about, and I realize this is a game audio podcast, and honestly, I wish my little thing would pop up. How do I do that?
Don't worry, everybody. He's Matt Piersall. He's a champion.
Yeah.
MattPearsall.com.
I really, yeah. .org, bro, because I'm free.
I want to get on Ableton though for one more minute to answer a couple of questions that are in the chat room. Will Ableton ever fix their UI? I think it looks bad. Yeah, their color scheme drives me a little crazy. As far as the layout, I totally was an Ableton 8 lover, and when Ableton 9 came out, I really had a hard time getting used to it. I am now used to it. Really stressed me. What was the next one? Live is great for arranging, says Pew Pew Pew, but getting ideas into it isn't as straightforward as a traditional DAW for me, at least. And that sitting here listening to Matt, for sound design, I use Ableton completely wrong. I never go to the cell view. I'm always in arrange view. I drop in my sounds that I want, that I've either captured or that I've got something in a library, and I line them up to some point on the timeline, and I play them together. What I love about Live is that I can just double-click on that, and the lower window, Matt, what you were talking about, I've got mine expanded to almost the top, and I just use the key. What is it? I think it's Shift Tab that opens and closes it. And so that way I see a huge audio waveform, and over here is all the options. I can reverse it, I can pitch bend it, I can the list goes on and on to the left once you're in waveform view of what you can do. And yet, if I wanted to, I was on Cubase before, and if I wanted to pitch bend an audio file, that was like 5 minutes of work.
Wow.
In Ableton, I just drop a slider, hit playback, and see if it works. And so that's why I switched to Ableton, is because it just made everything easier to do. I can touch something, slide something, and hear it change. And in other DAWs, you couldn't do that. And now, you know, Ableton's so powerful when it comes to pitch bending and all that stuff that they really became very famous for, that now in other DAWs you see this. And so Cubase now has some sort of pitch shifting thing that they do. And I keep my Cubase up to the latest version always, just in case there's something I need to go back for. Like, for instance, Ableton has no surround sound, and I do a lot of surround mixes, and so that drives me crazy because I have to create my own little Ableton surround weirdness by pointing it at different speakers per channel. It's not really the best way to do it, and frankly, I look to Logic every time I have to do I'll do all my work in Ableton, then I'll throw it to Logic, and then I'll do my surround work over there. Yeah, go ahead.
There's actually a suite of Max for Live plugins that handle the 5.1 mixing in Ableton.
Called.
So I'll find the links to those and put them up.
Oh, thanks. I search regularly for them, and I always see people saying, here's our surround. And in the end, it's not exactly what I'm looking for. It's always lacking in some kind of way.
Sure.
Kyle, why is it then? I'm still curious to know. I'm still curious to know then. You know, you don't use the cells view, which is the chief selling point of Live. But what does Live give you over, say, using Cubase again, or say using Logic for everything instead? If you're only using the arrange view, I mean, I checked out the arrange view, of course, and it looks just like a standard horizontal linear DAW arrange view. I couldn't really see any reason that this arrange view is vastly superior to Reaper or Logic or Pro Tools or Cubase.
You can start right at plugins. I mean, step number one, you want to add a reverb to some sort of snare track, right? In Live, you go over, you grab it, you drag it on top of the snare track, and you let go. In Cubase, I have to go, I think it's F11 to open this panel of plugins, select the plugin I want, attach it to that track. That's like 4 steps just to add a reverb to a snare. And in Live, I just drag and drop, which makes it a lot easier for me. And then it shows up on the bottom, and all of the knobs and whistles are there. I don't have to hit some sort of E or something to open it up and then mess with it, then close it and hear what it's doing. So there's a lot of that aggravates the crap out of me about other DAWs. And I'm an old analog guy, so what I don't like about DAWs is that they're trying to be analog, and I want to say, stop being analog.
I totally agree with that. Actually, that's what I think. You know, Reaper did this, and they've been successful with it. But Live was the first that didn't even try to really follow the tape machine methodology. It was just like, we are a computer program. Yeah. And, you can do whatever you want with it, and because of that, I feel like that it's very free. And like the UI was mentioned, for example. Like, I like the way the Ableton UI looks, because it's so simplistic. It's not trying to be fancy. It's like so German and minimalist, and just like, here's what you get, and I love that about it.
Yeah, and routing is amazing in Live. Routing is so simple in Live. I do the same routing in Logic, and I'm confused. And I've worked on SSL boards, and I get less confused on an SSL board than I do in Logic's routing. It's ridiculous trying to do a submix or something.
Sending a sidechain compressor or a gate on off, like in Pro Tools, it requires a tutorial for new beginners. In Ableton, it's very simple. It's just sidechain, here, this track, done.
Yeah. We should talk about the one more example, Alex, that I think is a real seller for Ableton. I think Matt will agree. If I wanted to say capture audio from a synthesizer in like Logic, right? I've got to an external synthesizer. I have to, of course, route the audio, and I got to route the MIDI, and then I go into the track in Logic and start to set all this stuff. And I have to have multiple tracks. I have to have the one that's sending it information from the MIDI, one that's recording it back, And that gets, it seems extremely simple, but Logic finds a way to make that very annoying. In Ableton, you open up a track, you drop in this thing called external instrument, you select your instrument, and you go.
Yeah.
You're done.
I love that.
I love it too. It's so awesome. And yet other DAWs, that simple task have made it very difficult. Well,
have you guys ever tried PreSonus Studio One?
No, there's too many DAWs. I can give up.
Because for a traditional, a traditional horizontal DAW, Studio One is really slick. I mean, it may not be up there with. Actually, I don't know. I guess it is kind of up there if you want to talk about its capabilities and all of that and stability. But I demoed Studio One a little bit, and I was really, really impressed about how everything works just very logically and very simply. You know, you sort of it's been very, very cleverly designed, and like Bitwig is to live, you sort of get the sense that Studio One have very, very deeply analyzed all of the different elder statesmen of DAWs out there and sort of said, okay, what are these ones doing wrong and how can we improve on this? It's the same with kind of Bitwig versus to live, although of course that's a bit of a different comparison because Bitwig's not trying to be exactly the same as live. Okay, you guys are doing a very, very good job at selling Ableton Live to me.
Well, I have to acknowledge Matt M. He has corrected me. He says there is an external instrument plugin in Logic. I don't spend enough time in Logic to find it. So, that's another thing about DAWs. Two questions. You're talking about the PreSonus one. What at this point would have to be in a DAW to pull you away from a DAW? Because I think pretty much everybody's chosen a DAW, and I feel, other than things like Ableton and Bitwig, that the majority of them are very similar. And so it would be difficult if I was a big Cubase guy to all of a sudden go to Logic, There would have to be some real catalytic kind of a catalyst. What's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it. But a major thing that made me want to switch over. And so when PreSonus came out with theirs and when Reaper came out with theirs, I didn't even look at them because I did, obviously. I reviewed them and I read articles, but I never downloaded anything because I didn't see any major change. I saw them saying, here's the way we do it and we think it's better, not you need this, this is amazing, you should try it. So what would get you to switch?
Matt?
I mean, if they like sponsored me and like handed me like loads of cash, I would consider it. No, seriously though, I don't really know. Like, I don't really know if there's a feature that I'm really missing that much, other than a better integrated like metadata search, which I actually find live search. For when I search for sound effects using the live search tool, the new one in 9,
yeah,
I find it to be just as good as any of the search, any of the like external $500 search programs, SoundMiner or anything like that.
Yeah,
it's not quite as good. There's not as much as you can do with it, but I think a better search might be nicer. That would get me there. I don't know, honestly, like, because I'm so into the live thing, and because I can, like, now save drum racks with all the samples contained, I think that's one thing, like, saving groups of content. Archiving is my biggest issue. The workflow right now in live, and, like, I'm excited to try Bitwig. I think I'm going to try it this week. But those workflows are, like, pretty rock solid. I think the biggest thing for me is sharing sessions, getting everyone in the studio with parity so that everyone has the same setup. That's kind of big. And most importantly, like, I want to know that if I package up a session and send it to Alex or to you, Kyle, that you're going to get pretty much that session.
Yeah.
And Ableton's pretty good at it. It's much better than Pro Tools. And honestly, I keep picking on Pro Tools because that's what I've used the most of in my past. I have used Logic. Logic for sound design was quite terrible.
Yeah.
Basically a joke. It's made for music, and music, like, guys that write game music love Logic because it's like, I'm a traditional composer and I write like this. It's great. But for sound design, and I think Ableton's the best package going on for like both.
I think also Ableton sounds good. Like, that was a big seller for me when I switched to Ableton. I think it was Ableton 4. That I took the same. I bounced everything, this project I was working on, to stereo, and listened to it out of Cubase. And I took that stereo and brought it into Ableton and didn't touch it with anything, just bounced it down, and Ableton made it sound better. I couldn't believe the difference. It's an amazing difference. There's something going on in those algorithms, just makes things sound better right from the beginning.
They really improved it, because back in the day, Ableton 1, Ableton 2 had a sound. Like, I could instantly tell when it was an Ableton track. Nowadays, I think Ableton sounds fantastic. Especially, like my interface is the Apollo, the Universal Audio Apollo.
Nice.
And so I'm using Ableton, but I have these like fantastic like Shadow Hills mastering compressor, and the LA2A that like sounds really good. I think it sounds better than the native versions for the Pro Tools has. Yeah, so I'm super into that setup.
Yeah, I think we've convinced Matt, huh? Oh, sorry, I mean Alex. Sorry, Alex.
I don't know. It's to answer your question about what it would take to make me switch to a different DAW with DAW. That's a really difficult question for me, because I've been using trackers for 25 years, and it creates a different kind of workflow in your mind. And of course, I have Reaper and I have Logic, and I'm trying out Live at the moment, and I sit there looking at this horizontal arrange view, thinking, where do I start? I guess I got to like create a clip first. Is that how it works with this? You make a clip. Like, what the hell is a clip? I don't know. Why does it have to be just there? I mean, we'll kind of just start writing my music.
Yeah, clip view seemed alien to me too. That's why I never really took to it. But I see the way Matt's using it is quite ingenious, actually, to be able to do.
Sorry, I shouldn't say clip. I should say region, because most of these horizontal DAWs, you start with a region, and then you put something in there, and then you copy it or loop it or something. I don't know. Anyway, for me, I think the approach, also the way of writing music is very different too. Where often with these other DAWs, you will create a little block of your music, and then you may repeat a little bit here, fill it up that section with that block there, and maybe copy it there, and then shift that bit back there, and you're sort of viewing your piece in a very macro view, which of course is a good thing. Whereas with tracker music, you're creating one pattern at a time, and the one pattern contains all of the music. So the way that you think about writing music becomes very, very linear, that you start here, you have a progression, and then you go to here, and then here. Maybe you might repeat one of these patterns again later down the line, but basically you're sort of, it's like building a building just sort of with no scaffolding, just sort of starting at the bottom and gradually moving up. Whereas it sort of seems that with a traditional horizontal DAW, it's more like a prefabricated building where you've got a floor here and a door there, and you put the floor there, but that floor doesn't really work there, so let's move it down there, and then we'll put this door up here. And I think because it's such a different approach for me, all of the DAWs, when I sit down look at them, I start by scratching my head, thinking, where do I begin here? And that's the reason why Live was very, very interesting for me to try, because it has something completely different, which is this cell clip view, where it is an extension of that idea of building your building using prefabricated parts. Because in this case, it's almost like Live allows you to create the third floor of your building, just sort of levitate it there in the sky, and then try and sort of build your second floor and your fourth floor depending on how it fits with the third floor.
That is the best way that has ever been put.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
That's for somebody who's used to just building the building from a brick by brick, kind of from the first floor gradually up to the top. It's a completely different approach, and very stimulating. But again, I don't know. To answer your question, like what would it take me to move away from a tracker program? Probably a project that needed me to do so.
Yeah,
I guess. And probably, from what you guys have told me, I'm really impressed, Carl, that you only get by with just Live's arrange view. That seems very impressive to me, because I looked at Live and I thought, oh, this is a fantastic tool for live performance. You can see that with the clip view. They go to the arrange view, and it's like, well, this seems a bit like a kind of like an add-on, like an afterthought. It's like, oh, geez, we need some kind of arrange view for the people who want to work in a more traditional way. This will do. We'll just put it in like that. There we go.
Well, that's the only way I know how to work. I mean, clip view for me is alien because I come from a world of tape machines and ribbons, as we used to call tracks, were called ribbons back then. At least the terminology we used when I was, because I'm old. But yes, I'm not doing anything amazing in Ableton. It's just that I like the workflow better than any other DAW, so I use it the same way as other DAWs, but bonus the workflow that makes sense to my brain. And the fact that they ignore the fact that they aren't an outboard tape-based studio, I really appreciate. It's a lot. It just doesn't make any sense to do 4 things to route something when you could just drag something, drop it on there, and it's routed. You know, I really like that Ableton did that. But they are missing MIDI capabilities, like you said, because during the Guitar Hero days, we used to stack. Matt will remember, we used to stack all our MIDI, and we used to use sonar so that we could see all the different MIDIs of all the different things, and they would be different colors depending upon the whatever it was. And I miss that because although I never had it before then, I got to loving it during the Guitar Hero days. Then after Guitar Hero, I'm back to Ableton and not having it again. I really miss that. So if they fix that and they fix the surround sound, I don't think I'll ever leave Ableton.
I just want to address one thing that Matt has said here, and I don't want to turn this. We've done trackers before on Game Audio, and we're not going to do it again. But I just wanted to address this as an interesting point. Matt says that I think real-time recording into clips or a linear DAW allows more expressive experimentation than using a tracker. And despite having 25 years of experience using trackers, I would actually tend to agree with that. However, I would say that trackers are not the best for experimentation. However, when you get used to them, and if you've only ever used them, you tend to write music with less experimentation, and it becomes a very decisive and highly, highly efficient way to write music, because it's less, what shall I put with this drum beat? Oh, I'll just play around a bit here and maybe, let's see if that works. It's less like that and more like, what shall I put with this drum beat? Right, here we go. Here comes my bass line. And you just sort of get on with it, and there's less sort of experimentation. So as a result, the kind of music that comes out of it tends to be a little bit different, there's less of a feeling of spontaneity about the music that would be created with a tracker, simply because it's come about through a much more decisive mental process where this is what I'm going to do and I'm writing it now, rather than I'll just try this and see if it works.
I was going to say something to that, actually, like when you started talking about trackers. I feel that the guys and girls that are good at tracker music are the fastest. Like Ableton, Pro Tools, Bitwig, any DAW that we're talking about doesn't even compare to the speed that a person that knows what they're doing with a tracker can work at.
So true.
It's just they're just so much faster. It's so much more robotic and precise and quick and speedy. The whole thing is set up to be efficient. And so I think that I don't know if the DAW will ever get to the point that a tracker is at, where it's that instantaneous. Because I think that tracking skills are it's hard. When someone is really good at trackers, they have to know what they want to do. They can't sit around and say, I want to do this. They typically have they might play around a second and then get something and then know what to do from that point. And the quick keys are all set up to where you can make that music really fast, usually without even a mouse. You're just clicking on the keyboard. And I think that's really impressive. I don't think that DAWs are there, nor do I think they should be there, because I think they serve a different purpose.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think this is the reason why my endless search for a more traditional DAW for those other kinds of times when I want to experiment. Although I rarely get that feeling, because I'm so used to approaching music, as you said, Matt, with there'll be a brief kind of exploration period, which is mostly mental, where I'm thinking, what kind of thing shall I write? But then after that, it's just, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do, so I just got to get on with it. And
you have the sound, Alex, right? Because you create your own synthesizers, right? So you have your own specific sound or palette that you can go back to, right? That's unique.
Yeah, but I guess as far as because I mean the whole appeal of a tracker for most people is the granular ability for mangling samples and all the amazing things that you can do with samples on a very granular level with trackers. Because I don't actually use samples with trackers, I'm kind of like you, Kyle. I mean, you're using a lot like Live, which is arguably the leading sort of live electronic music performance tool with its arrange view, and not taking advantage of its main selling point. Well, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not taking advantage of all of Renoise's capabilities as a sampler, and I'm just using it because, as Matt said, I'm used to it, and it just is really quick. You know, you can bang out a whole song in 1 or 2 hours, and you're done.
You know what I'd recommend for you to try in Ableton also with your demo if you can is to build your own synth. Matt knows what I'm talking about. You drop something in there, and you drop some other plugins past it, and you start messing with some knobs, and you come up with this amazing thing, and then you just...
Are you talking about... There's two different things. So there's like the easy way that I can actually do personally, which is the instrument rack.
Yes.
If they like drag like 10 synthesizers to make the perfect sound, that's amazing, and it's fast too. Then there's the other way that's way more heavy, which is like the Max for Live way, which is actually programming a synthesizer right there within Live, which is also super cool.
Which is also a big selling point for me when they... Well, I was already in it, but I'd done a bunch of Max stuff and loved Max. And then when Max for Live was introduced to Ableton, I was like, oh my God, I'm already in Ableton. This is fantastic. But no, I'm talking... What Matt was talking is you... and Alex, you can drag over a synthesizer into a track, right? And the bottom shows up. Yeah, and then you can drag another synthesizer or whatever on top of that device that's in the bottom window of Ableton, and it'll add it as a second device. And you can start stacking devices in this one rack. And so you'll end up with, and then you can set the key parameters, like this synthesizer only plays for the bass keys, this one sets for the higher keys. You can add effects to specific instruments that are inside this giant rack rather than all of them as a whole, but you can also add like reverb at the end of it that'll affect anything that comes out of the output of this thing. And then all you do is you hit save, give it a name, and it saves it for you as a brand new kind of keyboard that you've created.
You can also have, if I'm not mistaken, I think you can have a synthesizer or an instrument trigger at certain velocities only.
Yeah, they have the velocity sensitivity on there too.
Does Live have an ability, when you do sidechaining in Live, one of the cool things about the way that the routing in Renoise is very, very peculiar but extremely versatile. And one thing that it has is when you do sidechaining, you use a plugin called a signal follower. And a signal follower will just take the volume that's coming out of a channel and convert that into a number, a fluctuating number, and then you can pipe that number into absolutely anything. So if you want to take that number and put it into, for example, the cutoff of a filter, so instead of doing a volume ducking, you can actually do a frequency ducking. Does Live allow you to do that as well?
Sort of. What you could do is, there's a couple of things. Like there's a gate plugin that you can sidechain to anything. That's basically a volume on-off. So saying that your volume is the frequency of a filter, for example.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do that.
I'm looking it up. Live has a built-in device that does that, and I'm just trying to find out what its name is. I might have to tell you after the show, or put it.
That's one thing that I really enjoy doing with Renoise is taking like this, for example, from a bass drum, and instead of just ducking the volume, taking a high-pass filter and then just ducking the cutoff frequency for the high-pass filter.
It's very cool. Yeah.
I think it's the multiband dynamics. You just have to. Some of the Live devices have this little caret, and if you open it, all of a sudden a sidechain menu shows up. I think that's what it is because I did a quick search. I know I've used it before. I just can't remember what it is. And I did a quick search for sidechaining frequencies plus Ableton, and a video of the multiband dynamics came up for Live 9. I think that's what it is, but obviously I'm not going to watch the video while we're live.
Yeah, I wish I wish I could find a way in Live to basically like gate on and off a sound. So if I wanted to do a creature voice, I could have the amplitude of my voice raise or lower the pitch of something. Like that would be hot. I'm sure it's doable with Max for Live, but I'm not 100% certain.
We'll figure it out. So look at us at an hour in. Did we cover what we were talking about? Not really. Typical of us.
I think your actual first question to me was what did I buy for Black Friday sales, and the answer actually was that I didn't actually buy live, although it's actually still for sale, so maybe I will yet. I didn't buy Bitwig. I bought the least likely thing that somebody like me would ever buy. Absolutely most. I mean, I work with trackers and I only use synthesizers, and I love creating my own patches. So I went and bought Native Instruments Contact Library Scarby Mark I, the Rhodes piano.
It's good.
Because everybody, this is my favorite keyboard instrument is the Rhodes Mark I, and so and that one sounded very good and it was very cheap, so I got that one. What did you guys get?
Matt, what'd you get?
I bought a sweater. Seriously, I really did. Really good sweater.
Your beats are cold.
Yeah, well, it just got cold here all of a sudden. I also picked up the nature, 3 nature libraries from Boom that Gordon did. His stuff's fantastic, so I picked up 3 of his.
Can you send me the link? I'll put it in the show notes.
Sure.
That was it? A sweater and some nature sounds?
What about you, Kyle?
All right, I got a $40 television, and I pile drive someone to get it.
Nice.
Happy?
That's the way it should be. It's Black Friday. Did you see that picture that somebody put up that had like it had a scene from Night of the Living Dead, all these people plastered up against the glass, and then right beside it it said Black Friday 2014, and all these people are plastered up against the glass. I thought it was so fitting.
Yeah.
I got the Waves Gold bundle. Again, like I said at the beginning of the show, Matt wasn't here for. I've avoided Waves because they're too expensive, but $200 for what they call $800 worth of product, I felt was worth it.
I'll be really interested over the next, as you work through those different plugins, I'll be really interested to hear your opinions on whether they're actually worth, why, the big question that we posed at the beginning, why all of Hollywood and all of the big mixing guys, they all use Waves. Is it really that much better than all the other?
Because they're transparent. They have some color to them, but they're not. They're really good and simple, I think. I don't really feel like Waves has a sound that I like, but it is kind of pro. Like there's certain plugins, like L1's kind of a classic because it's like a pretty good limiter that's not going to distort. Their EQs tend to be pretty good. They have good, relatively decent. Some of them are better than others, but decent approximations of old gear. Their surround bundle for native is good. Their TDM bundles are good. But I don't use Waves anymore because I got annoyed with. I basically bought Waves Gold back when I spent $1,000 on it because I bought it a long time ago.
Oh.
And then I bought other things, like they had a good pitch shifter, and they had all these plugins that were pretty good. But I've simplified that stuff. I use only like UAD stuff now. I use Native Instruments stuff, Sound Toys. So I'm off Waves, but I think they're for $200. Yeah, duh, get them.
Yeah, that's what I did. But I use the LA2A compressor, the real thing, a lot, and I did a comparison to my ear of what they were producing out of Waves for a project actually that I used the original on, and I was able to just rip the raw track that I had before I processed it, and it was really difficult to tell the difference between the two. And as a matter of fact, as I kept A/Bing them between the real and the fake, I couldn't tell if the difference I was hearing was my mind just making it up because I'd A/B'd too much. You know what I mean? When you're looking for something and you're thinking, I think I hear it, but you don't know for sure. And I have to remind myself that if I'm not sure, then that's a pretty good plug-in instead of just trying to be overly critical. So I think that they did a good job on that one. And then there's a version of that that's supplied through Native Instruments / Guitar Rig. I think they call it the like Classics or something like that. I don't know what it is. You'd have to look it up. And it did not compare. It was not quite as good. I thought that was pretty interesting. But then again, Guitar Rig has Transient Master, and I use that a lot. You use that, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great plug-in. So no, I'm not taking anything away from Native Instruments, but their compressor was not quite what I was looking for.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times though, like with any of these like reproductions of classic gear, when you're playing a sound back 500 times in a minute, you know, or like let's say like you hear a sound once, for example. Like it depends on like, I don't know. I think the mix of the game is always the most important thing.
Yeah, yeah.
More than even like what plugins you used or how. Like no one's gonna be able to say like, oh my God, that's not a real LA2A on that explosion sound.
No, they won't. They won't. But you know what I do when I'm mixing though, and I thought this might be a good show topic for not to talk about what I do. God knows I'm barely getting by. I'm an idiot. But I think these are extremely important to flip between these and your, your speakers.
Yeah.
And then also I do a reference track. So I have a reference track of a mix that I'm trying to hit, and then I listen to it I listen to what I'm doing on speakers, on headphones, back to the reference, speakers, headphones, back to the reference, speakers, headphones, speakers, headphones, speakers, headphones to fix some compression that I can hear, back to the reference track. You know, it's this like endless loop of going around. And as I was doing it today, I thought, I wonder if people be interested in like what our little esoteric ways of working are. Like, what do you do with trackers, Alex? What do you do with your sound design stuff, Matt? You know, I think it'd be kind of an interesting show.
Sure.
Maybe, yeah, if we approach it just actually in the chat room, I composed is just asking whether maybe we could do an episode about audio implementation. So maybe if we made an episode basically like the total workflow, say if you take one sound that's required for a game, the whole workflow from conception to production to implementation, that might be interesting. And also to compare notes amongst each other about how we do that, because I'd really be curious about how you guys are using Live, because you've made it very appealing for me today.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm surprised we haven't done an implementation. Sometimes before the show we think, what are we going to talk about? And we never go, hey, let's implement something. But I spend my day doing that with Unity, so it's kind of, you know, that could be a fast, fun thing.
Yeah.
Hey, Kyle.
Well, maybe...
Go, Matt.
Oh, sorry, last question, and then because I know we all have to go. When you make a script for on trigger enter and you want it to fire only once, do you know how to do this?
You were talking about that on like Twitter or something, weren't you?
No, that was a different thing.
Oh, so what was the question again?
I'm wondering how to make a script in C# that says only fire this event one time. Like, don't re-trigger it, because when you enter a trigger, it's basically going to say I'm entering, and it's going to spam your data.
So it's a one-shot file, though, right?
No, it's a loop that I want to fire off one time.
Well, you know, off the top of my head, I don't know, but I can't imagine there isn't that functionality already built in. There's some sort of function you could probably, call inside that.
To fire only once? Yeah, I just don't know what it is.
Oh, I'll look for it, man. I'll see if I can find it.
I looked up today, but I'm not good at that type of thing. So
fire a loop once.
Yes.
All right, I'll look for it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, let's see if I can come up with it. If I don't, we may have found some hole.
No, there's a way to do it. I know there is.
Cool. Well, hey guys, I guess we should call it a show.
It's been good. It's been interesting. We actually were going to be talking about our go-to signal chains, as far as, this is the limiter that you always use, and this is the compressor you always use, and the EQ. Maybe we can save that for next time as well, if we're going to be talking about implementation from start to beginning, start to end.
We've got two good show topics for the next couple weeks: implementation and what I was calling. What did I call it in the green room? Just so I can remember. Posterity's sake. Nah. Oh well. I'm creating dead air, just trying to. Oh, tool sets like what plugins do you specifically use when you're recording guitar? Or what plugins do you specifically use for mixing? And I was saying not something that. And Matt, I'm saying this so you can like be ready.
Yeah.
Because I know you've got all kinds of cool suggestions, but not the stuff that like, hey, this is popular, use what's best for you, because sometimes we end our show with those like generic responses of just do whatever feels good for you. But I was thinking today that I always reach for some specific devices, and I'll experiment with others, but there's some that I won't walk away from. I'll always use, and I think those are important to point out.
I agree. Let's talk.
All right, we'll do it. Coming up maybe next week. You'll have to tune in to find out.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hey, I'm going to say some things. Please like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube and tweet us and follow us on Twitter. Thanks, Chatties, for being here and saving my bacon a couple of times. And I'll talk to you guys later.
See you guys.
Bye.